She was smart, successful, and had her whole life ahead of her. That is until one fateful night in New Orleans, a routine walk from her work to her car turned into a nightmare leading to a shocking crime that would take nearly 30 years to reach its final chapter. This is the chilling case of Molly Elliott, a case filled with controversies and delayed justice. Hello, Digestives. Welcome to Crimes Digested. This is a place where we try to digest senseless crimes. So if you're new here, welcome. And if you are returning, thank you for joining me once again. I love you guys. We're just gonna jump straight into today's story. And as always, I'm gonna tell you really quickly about the victim. Mary Margaret Murphy Elliott, affectionately known as Molly, was described as this vivacious, warm, and loving woman who was always surrounded by animals. They just gravitated toward her, they love her. She would light up any room that she walks into. I mean, looking at her pictures during my little research, I can kind of understand, okay? I get what people are saying. She has this just radiant smile. She's one of those people whose smile just makes their eyes sparkle with life, and it's almost contagious. If she smiles in your direction, I can guarantee you'll feel compelled to smile back, okay? She's those people that are very rare to find, like myself. Molly was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona in 1968, and as a baby, her mother thought this child just looked like, and I quote, a bald-headed bundle of energy, laughter, and joy. Of course, most mothers think their babies are the best, but honestly, like I said, looking at her, you can see just the joy in her face, Like, she just radiates pure happiness. That's the best way I can think of describing her. As Molly get older, her dreams became as bright as the desert sun. She had big dreams. She decides to go through school in Southern California. She gets a job at this very prestigious advertising agency in Los Angeles, California. She was working as this advertising executive. Not long after, she meets the love of her life. They fall in love, she gets married, and they both decide it'd be in their best interest to move to Covington, Louisiana in 1994. The couple decide to invest in a country home with a large field of land and be surrounded by nature and animal. She was living the Pinterest dream life that most girls say they want, okay? A ranch for homesteading, animals of different species, and being homemakers. This is until November 27, 1996, a day before Thanksgiving, the time when most of us are probably preoccupied with turkey and family squabbles. Some of us are probably preparing our retorts for that one judgmental aunt who questions everything you do and judges you about every decision, or that nosy one that asks when you'll settle down finally and start a family, when you'll have kids, Or maybe you have a holier than thou cousin who brags about everything in her life, about how much she's better than you and she's doing so much better compared to you. Dang, this is getting personal. Anyways, 28-year-old Molly gets out to retrieve her car from the Sheraton parking garage with a radiant smile on her face. You might be wondering why she's smiling, Rose. Well, I'm glad you asked, okay? Yeah, I'm glad you asked. She's smiling ear to ear because she had a date. She has been anticipating the end of her work day the moment she walked in. Okay, now, of course, she loved her job, but they were still in their honeymoon phase. And it's just this exciting time, The couple thought that before meeting the family the next day for Thanksgiving dinner, it'd be nice if they just spent time, just the two of them, going out and having a romantic night in town, just them, no interruption. So the moment her work ended, she grabs her purse, she throws all her personal items that she's gonna take in there, and she sauntered out of there. I'm pretty sure every one of her coworkers leaving that day was thinking, wow, this girl's really excited for the holiday break. Who can blame her? None of them realized that that would be the very last time that Molly would be walking those halls. Molly walked towards the parking garage, and this was around like 5 p.m. She heads to her car to go to her husband's office when she encounters a young guy. He seems to be in his like late teen years. I'm pretty sure she didn't think too much about it because he was wearing a valet uniform. So as he approaches her, she probably didn't think much about it. But that is until he points a gun at her. Jessie Hoffman Jr. was born in 1997 in Louisiana, and he was one of 5 siblings. He loses one of his brothers at a very young age. So they live in a violent place, okay? They had a very rough upbringing. They were being constantly moved around. At some point, they moved into the projects. Their mother was abusing them physically, constantly. For example, if something goes missing in the house, instead of looking for it or asking the kids, she would make them place their hands on a hot stove top until their fingers grew blisters. They would get whipped constantly with belts, allegedly. So, I mean, this is a hard life for anyone. Now, don't get me wrong, this does not excuse his actions. I just think that it plays a big role in the person that he was turning into, the person he was becoming. Because despite what he was going through in his personal life, this guy was still considered to be thriving academically, and he was also part of his high school football team. He was doing good for himself. He was a quarterback. He was doing good. But that's until he got a girlfriend and his grades started dropping. But I can't blame him, okay? The guy was living life. He had a girl. He was excited. And fortunately, he still made it through high school, okay? The girl didn't keep him from graduating. He gets a job. He actually worked multiple jobs before graduating, okay? And I was proud of him until I thought about it again. And I was like, I'm starting to wonder, why was he changing work so frequently? I digress. After high school, though, he starts working as a valet. Like I said, he just started there too. He was working there for like 2 months, or no, 2 weeks prior to the time of committing this murder. And Molly had the unfortunate fate of running into him on that fateful day in November of 1996. Hoffman at gunpoint forced Molly into her own vehicle, and if you're thinking this sounds like the worst opening of a bad thriller, you're not alone. Only here, the stakes were heartbreakingly real. Hoffman made Molly pull over at an ATM at some point where he demands a sum of $200, and I can't imagine, like it breaks my heart to imagine the thoughts racing through Molly's head in that very moment. She might even have felt a sense of relief. She might have even begun thinking, okay, this guy maybe just wanted money. And now that he has the money, he'll let me go, right? He succeeded. He got what he set out to do. She did not know that the horror has just begun. Because from there, he drove her to a secluded area in St. Tammany Parish where the unspeakable unfolded. He R-words Molly, and in a final chilling act, Hoffman forced Molly to kneel down and end her life with a single gunshot. Andy Elliott, the husband, was sitting at home sitting at his office waiting for his wife, and he had no idea that she would never walk back into his life again. He waited and waited, and now he's getting concerned. I mean, this is unlike Molly. She's not like that. She would have at least called him if she was going to be late. If she knew she was running late, she would have called him. But silence. So he calls the police to report her missing. And he's also anxiously calling around, asking people like if anyone saw her. The very next day, the unimaginable happened. Thanksgiving Day, Molly's body was discovered by a duck hunter. Yes, of all people. And this discovery sent a shockwave through the whole community, okay? And it propels law enforcement into a full-scale investigation. ATM receipts and surveillance videos or footages eventually link Hoffman to the scene of the accident, making it painstakingly clear that this was not just some random act of violence. A prosecutor said, quote, "The ATM videotape shows the terror on Miss Elliott's face as she withdrew money from her account." And Hoffman was seen standing next to his victim. This was during the trial in January 1997. A grand jury of St. Tammany Parish indicted Jessie Hoffman Jr. on first-degree murder. Of course, initially, he pleaded not guilty, okay? He claims that the victim wanted it. The victim wanted the essay, she consented, and when they finished, there was some random guy that walked up to them, and he took her away from him, walks into this secluded area, only to return alone. I would have asked questions, but he later recants that statement anyways. And he was like, there was never another guy, okay? I lied, but don't just accidentally went off. It exploded accidentally. During a trial in 1998, the prosecution laid out a mountain of evidence against him, starting with Hoffman's initial denials, and then a culmination of a confession that was damning, and it was just all the jury needed to find him guilty, and he was sentenced to death in September of 1998. Molly's family was completely shattered by this loss, yet they united in their quest for justice. Her mother tearfully recalled how, quote, "Molly lit up every room. She was the heartbeat of our home." While her husband, Andy, shared that every day without her, every single day without her was a reminder of an irreplaceable void. The court will describe this crime as exceptionally heinous. Hoffman made multiple attempts to appeal his verdict, but every appeal gets denied or rejected. And now, after years of appeals, Jessie Hoffman Jr.'s execution was finally scheduled for March 18, 2025. Louisiana's choice of nitrogen gas as the execution method. This faced some backlash, okay? It was very experimental. It hasn't been used. He was the first one to get the gas in Louisiana. So his case is actually very reminiscent to another case that I did. And it's on a convict named Demetrius Frazier, who was also appealing his case or his verdict because he claims that the execution was kind of unconstitutional. Hoffman's attorneys even argued that using the nitrogen gas infringed upon his client's Eighth Amendment rights. They state that it clashes with his religion, reminding us that even in the final moment, personal beliefs should matter. Now, public opinions remain kind of divided. Some see the execution as a long-awaited justice for Molly, like it's been years. But others, armed with statistics and articles from University of California, Berkeley, they question the morality and efficacy of capital punishment. A lot of people don't really want capital punishment, especially when the execution is via uncertain methods, you know? So, yeah, but everyone has an opinion when it comes to stuff like this. Molly Elliott's life was tragically cut short, leaving an indelible mark on her family, her community, and just the broader discourse on justice and punishment. Her case is a very poignant reminder of the deep, deep scars left by violent crimes and the ongoing complex debates about capital punishments in America. But join me as we remember Molly Elliott, reflect on the intricate balance between justice and humanity, and just explore the critical questions that define our criminal justice system. After all, if we don't learn from the past, we're doomed to rerun the worst part of our own script. Okay, if you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and slap the subscription button as well, okay? Don't forget to share this with everyone who you believe would love to hear about this case. I hope you enjoyed this video. I really do. And I want you to stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Bye.